Good afternoon and welcome to today's Ad Week webinar, where we'll be looking at ways that you can zero in on your content experience. And we'll be providing you with a framework to better meet end user expectations. And today's webinar is being sponsored by Progress Software and its Sitefinity product. I'm Stuart File, head of AdWeek's Branded Content Studio, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. Before we begin, I'm just going to take a few minutes here and make sure that everyone is familiar with the features of our webinar platform and also knows what to expect from our event today. Our actual presentation should go somewhere in the 30, maybe 35-minute range. Afterwards, we're going to have plenty of time for audience Q&A. So if at any point during our webinar, if you have a question for our speaker, just simply use the question tool that you see there on the left side of your screen and submit your questions. And after we're done, again, we're going to get to as many audience questions as we can during that Q&A time. Of course, we urge you ask your questions during the webinar. No need to hold them all till Q&A. That way we've got plenty of stuff set up when we get to that part. It's not too late, by the way, to invite your colleagues to join us today. And we'd really love it if they would. About 15 minutes ago, we sent everyone a final reminder email for today's event. And in there, you will find a link over to the registration page. It's a bit.ly. You'll see it. It's pretty obvious. Grab it, send it off to your colleagues, Slack it out to them, email it to them, whatever they need. Have them register, right? There's still plenty of time for them to do that and come and join us live. But if they can't make it live, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand. And we're going to send a link to that on-demand version to all of our registered attendees and actually all of our registrants. And that's going to come, about 3:30 Eastern time today. So keep an eye out for that. If you are interested in getting a copy of today's slide deck, and we often get requests for those, you can find it right now in the Event Resources area, and you'll see that tab up at the top of your screen. So head on in there, you'll be able to download a PDF of the slides today. Lastly, I just want to remind everyone to please check out the AdWeek webinar calendar, www.adweek.com/webinars with an S. We've got a full schedule, 4 webinars, 5 webinars a week. We're doing 5 this week. Lots of different topics, really everything that covers marketing. Again, we've got content and content experience today. We've got upcoming webinars related to data, the changing of things going on in a cookieless world, the state of creativity today, what you have to look forward to in 2021. When it comes time to digital marketing. Again, all different topics, all different things. See what's there, see what appeals to you. Sign up for an upcoming webinar. We always love having you as part of this. And we're, again, always flattered that our audience finds our webinars so helpful. So again, we want to ensure that you're seeing everything and that you have a chance to increase your knowledge and start doing your job better. So let's move on to today's webinar, and let me just take a moment here and introduce our speaker. Again, we're very happy today to be joined by Gregg Shupe. Gregg is the digital experience thought leader over at Progress Software, working with Sitefinity. And he's got nearly 2 decades of professional marketing experience, working across a broad range of industries, enterprise IT, consumer electronics, telecom. Gregg's got a proven track record of helping companies and business partners digitally transform their organizations and really the ways that they need to go to engage with the modern consumer. So Gregg, let me pass this on over to you to start our webinar today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stuart, for the kind introduction and allowing me to come in and share my thoughts here with your audience here at AdWeek. And for everyone who's attending, thank you guys very much for allowing me to share my thoughts on how we zero in on your content experience. And by the end of this webinar, I want to be able to give you a framework that you can take in-house and start building out your content experience so you can have a better chance of engaging with your customers and your end users with a lot of compelling experiences that meet their demands. So as we unpack the content of what we can and should do for your companies, I want to just identify that content aligns so well with customer experiences and what your customers truly do expect. And these expectations have been growing, have been evolving for quite some time now. And in fact, the last 7 months, we've seen just this explosion of how they want us to engage with them. And the success that we have on meeting these customers' expectations aligns directly with the experience that we create. And it's all about the perception of your brand, and it's how we engage with customers, and it's understanding what they want. In fact, about 70 recently here, Salesforce.com did a survey, and it came back with about 72% of consumers and 89% of business buyers expect that your company, your brand, understands their unique needs and expectations. This has been a growing number. This stat has been increasing over the years, but this is one of the first times that I want to break this out a little bit to show you that 89% of business buyers, this is your B2B companies, their expectations are increasing, accelerating to a point of the consumer level. And so long are the days that have gone past that we could separate out B2B experiences from B2C experiences. Those expectations, those needs, those understandings are now blended into what your customers want and how we need to deliver on their expectations. Along with that, this one's very interesting to me. 73% of customers say that just one extraordinary experience raises their expectations of that company, of other companies, excuse me. So as we are out in the internet world and we're surfing around, we encounter these really impactful experiences. I'm sure you have a flood of them coming to your mind right now. Those experiences now just resonate with you, and now you expect other companies to raise the bar on how they deliver on those expectations for you. That one-size-fits-all experience that once was a de facto is gone. We need to start looking at tailored and contextualized engagements across all your different touch points to raise the bar and to disrupt the current business model. So customers have that extraordinary experience with your company, and those experiences need to be seamless. They need to come together. They need to come together without friction. That seems to flow. It feels right. And engaging with your customers, we need to start looking at unifying our customer journeys. Interesting that we've spent so much time acquiring customers that we forget about the post-conversion. We forget about the actual customer part of customer experience. And so we need to identify the fact that we have a life cycle of customers. We've a lifelong journey with those customers, and we need to adapt and engage with them both the pre and post conversion. And we need to do this as a scalable model. And we need to be able to connect to different technologies so we can extend or be extensible, extend that footprint, allow your company to have best of breed technology and implementation. Because when you're able to do that, when you're able to scale and when you're able to deliver on these seamless digital experiences, you're able to have a very nimble, a very agile team. And with the technology, you're able to spin up and spin down so quickly. Now you can go ahead and pivot according to where those customers are and how they want to be engaged with. 7 months ago, I'm sure a lot of us were caught flat-footed when coronavirus came in and disrupted our physical world. And now we had to rely on the digital experiences that we have created, the compelling digital experiences that we've sought after and that our customers expect. We may not have succeeded very well, and we weren't nimble or agile enough to pivot. And so our customers are expecting us to be there for them when they are ready. It's almost like a lose-lose situation. As we have to predict where our customers are, what they want to see, and deliver a level of messaging that they expect going forward. But I think we can do it. I think that there is light at the end of this tunnel, and I think that we not only can we deliver on it, but I think we can deliver across all destinations and all devices. And as we unpack this a little bit more, I want to really dive into that all destinations, because it is this digital experience, this content experience goes well beyond your website. In fact, it's interesting. Harris Poll did a recent survey, and they came out and said about 48% of U.S. marketers think that they're delivering an exceptional experience. So I mean, we're congratulating ourselves by digitally engaging, by extending beyond our website, by getting our messages out into all these different channels. Now, unfortunately, the same poll came back and said less than a quarter of customers think that we're actually doing that. This is a huge perception gap. And we need to identify that. We need to understand that we are not delivering on these expectations. We need to start changing things inside our world. We need to start changing the way that we go about creating these different experiences. We need to understand this perception gap and start working to better align our digital experiences. And we need to understand what these digital experiences are. I mean, they are built with different elements. There are fundamental elements that build our digital experiences. And I think that content is one of those. I think content allows you to create your digital experiences no matter where your customers want to engage with you and your brand. But we need to do it in unique and personalized ways. One way that we can do it is start with imagery. Imagery evokes emotion. Imagery evokes awareness. And so when we have consistent thematic imagery, we can enhance the message. We can make the message long-lasting. And images are content. So I'm going to go through a couple of these different elements that are built with content that I think we sometimes forget about. Because at the end of the day, with images being content, and of course text being content, but I think it even goes beyond those two elements. I think we get into audio. I think we get into video. Now, audio and video are on the uprise. The last 3 or 4 years, podcasting it's just exploded with listeners. And of course, there's YouTube and TikTok and Instagram with all the video feeds out there to consume. So how are we engaging with our customers and our end users with content, with audio content and video content? Are we pushing video into social media at all? These are things that our customers expect and they want desperately to engage with. And then maybe a little further down in the future, we start looking at virtual reality. And this is one other great movie, Ready Player One. I don't think that we're to the point where we're running around in this virtual environment with avatars and conducting business that way. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think that's still pretty far down the road. But it's something we need to keep a pulse on. And we need to identify the fact that that it's there, it's available, and maybe we need to start identifying what are the precursors, what are those extra little steps that we can get to before we get to virtual reality. And one is augmented reality. And so when we're looking at augmented reality, now we're digitizing our own physical awareness. We're digitizing what we physically see in the world. And there's some companies that are doing a great job at this. And I'm going to touch on that in just a little bit as we unpack augmented reality. But I think it's one that we need to have a very serious conversation with our teams to see if augmented reality can provide a value to your business, because it's available now and people are using it now. It's not quite mainstream, but if it makes sense, if you're like a furniture company, you can actually see that new product on your wall or on your floor, or maybe you go beyond that to clothing or different other textiles, right? So augmented reality definitely has its place, and I think that next step with augmented reality is something called mixed reality. Mixed reality is something that not a lot of people really talk too much about, but what this does is it brings augmented reality into a transaction. So not only can you see it, but you can interact with it. It brings this virtual concept into your augmentation. And so maybe it's more than just zooming in and out for a product that you see through your phone, but maybe it's actually tapping on it, on that product, and getting a list of the price, availability, ship times, all of that information. And so as we start looking in the future, it's like, how can other businesses really be impacted by mixed reality? Well, if you're in a logistics business, maybe you can look at your warehouse through your phone and actually start tapping on things, and the data starts coming up that it's connected to. And there's a lot of different elements that we can do. The biggest part with this content is that you're starting to create immersive experiences. And that is what your customers want. In fact, they're already doing it. This year, 44 million people will use AR on social networks. We see it all the time. How many filters do we have on Snapchat? How many filters do we use on Instagram? This AR is happening all the time. We're being trained to use it. So it's only a matter of time before it starts becoming a demand, an expectation. And so that's why I'm saying we need to unpack that for your company and then understand, do you have a need? Does it provide value or not before you start making those investments? But it is coming. We are being trained through social media. So let's bring it back to now how content experience really plays its role. You know, there's a survey done by the CMO Council, and it came back and said that the irrelevant content is the #1 reason for lost engagement between brand and buyer. Isn't that interesting? Content that we write, content that we develop, content that we create is not resonating. It's not meeting the mark of our customers, of our end users. In fact, it's the #1 reason that they leave, because it's not compelling for them. And so that's why I think content experience has such a role as you create digital experiences. It's that overarching feeling and engagement that you get when you're accessing, consuming this content. And more complicated, and we're going to get into how we do this, but more complicated, we need to do it across devices. It has to go beyond your website. And we need to transcend platforms and channels, and then we have a journey that's being impacted on it. So let's figure out what do we do? What is a good framework that we can use to create compelling content? Well, first, I think we start with an architecture. This is where we would consider connecting digital dots. We need to make sure that we know all of our destinations, where our content is going to go, and make sure that we have connections to them. And what I mean by that is it's not a swivel problem. It's not swiveling in your chair between computers, between browsers, between platforms. You need to have a single source of content that distributes to many platforms, to many destinations, and even many devices as we go forward. So we need to map out our architecture. We need to understand and fundamentally understand, what does our architecture look like? And only then can we start really creating the content. And we start creating that content with the end in mind, with that device in mind. with the end user in mind. And we start developing those imagery, the text, the video, the audio, all those different experiences that we want to evoke. We start creating them into this single source, this single core for content. And then we need to manage it. This is where we get into workflows, and we get into provisions and authors and editors and different classes, and how does this impact my journey and our call to actions, and how do we hand off content from a social media outlet into back to a website, or from a phone to a website to a desktop computer. How does all that? How do we manage that created content so that when we deliver it and we distribute it, it gets to the right place with all the provisional check marks that goes along with it? Because distribution of that content is now making your architecture work. Because you already have your architecture planned and you already have your digital dots connected, now you're able to take that content and push it out into different destinations or different devices. Now, amplification's here. And I think amplification is interesting because it's something I don't think we do a whole lot of as a whole. Amplification means that we're going to create our element of content. Maybe it's a blog post, maybe it's a web page, maybe it's a white paper. But how do we make sure that people know that it's there? How are we communicating that out? Maybe we form a campaign to have a bunch of emails go out that says, hey, we have a new white paper. And that's fine. But I think we need to get a little deeper into that. I think that the expectation it goes beyond email for how end users engage with your company. I think we need to start looking at your social media. And just imagine in your heads right now, just imagine if you could get every single member of your team to amplify a piece of content on social media, how many eyes would you hit? 1,000? 5,000? 10,000? 50,000, depending on the size of your team and their social media network? That becomes super powerful. And what you're now doing is creating that experience, because maybe you have a video introducing the white paper that takes them to a bit.ly link back to your reg page, so you can collect that lead and they download that white paper. Right? You create the seamless transition between these platforms and these destinations. And so now you're able to amplify all that time, energy, and resource you put into creating and development of that content. Now you amplify it out. You try and sing from the mountaintops and use a lot of different platforms to go do that. And what is amplification? What is even creation without measurement of success? So a lot of times what we do is we will have our analytics. And analytics are great, and we absolutely need them. A lot of times what happens is that analytics are a backward-looking metric. It's taking a look, it says, this is what has happened. Advanced analytics starts putting a forward-looking analytical structure together. So now you're able to do prescription and prediction. If you do these things, you can predict this will be the outcome. Or even more advanced with prescription, to say, here's now how to maximize your results by doing these additional steps, or putting content in these additional places, or amplifying it on these additional networks. So we're looking back from a historical standpoint, and we're putting AI to it, and we're starting to understand the predictive nature of analytics, and we're starting to get concepts and insights that we can now force back into our architecture to make sure that we have all of those new networks connected up. Or maybe we have the prescription of here's how to develop new content that your customers want, and manage it through the process, and distribute it and amplify it, and then receive the results so we can have new prescriptions coming in to be more and more effective. So that's what the cyclical nature of this framework provides. It provides not only the connectivity and to understand that we need to get content from our single source out to all these different destinations, but also we need to measure the effectivity of that work that we just did. And I keep referring to this content from a single source. And this is really what I'm talking about here is a decoupled CMS, if you will. So it's decoupling from your front end. A lot of times, our content management systems have one sole purpose, and that one sole purpose is pretty much focused on your corporate website. And maybe you have some connections into a web application, but that's pretty much it. Predominantly, that's what's going on. These new modern CMSs, these new modern content management systems, really allow you to push content much farther out, much broader into maybe it's mobile applications or conversational apps. Maybe it's wearables or different desktop applications. So it allows you to get broader because our customers aren't always on our website. In fact, they demand these content experiences. They demand to get it now because there's this explosion of these new interfaces and touch points that we have to create experiences for. We need to move in lockstep with search capabilities and the search expectations because it's an instant gratification society out there for our customers. They want it now, they want it their way, and they don't want to wait for communication from you. They want us to preempt that communication. Now, all of this sounds pretty strange and forward-thinking, but like I said before, the pandemic did not create this. These wheels were already in motion well before we knew what coronavirus was. This is an emotion that was inevitable. We were going down this path. Coronavirus just accelerated that. And so now we talk about those new devices, and because things are getting developed so quick, how do we deliver to these new touch points? What does that new world look like once we're able to connect all those digital dots? Well, maybe when we get back into the physical world, but we'll have digital signage. Maybe we're able to push relevant content into digital signage. That way, it can change, it can adapt, it can be nimble, it can be agile. Or maybe we start looking at immersive technology. We talked about augmented, which is a form of immersive technology, but we have mixed reality. We have in fact, the clothing industry, M. Taylor, I think, actually has a body scan that you can do with your cell phone, and then it can recommend clothing. Those are the types of things that are immersive, that customers want to dive deep into. And also chatbots. This is not a digital assistant that just does things. This is a chatbot that actually provides a lot of AI to accelerate the attainment of your goals of your end users. It's not a workflow. It's an intelligent technology that allows your users to understand, to experience a self-service model without having human intervention. Maybe it's wearables. One thing I have yet to see, and I hope I will never see, is that maybe if we understand what these wearables can do, we can deliver content to different wearable devices. And this is the content you would want here is going to be bite-sized, very quick. You're not going to deliver a white paper to a watch. It will not work. The experience would not be there. But you definitely can put a data point to a watch and then transition to a phone that transitions to a website. Very, very plausible. And of course, I can't stress enough the power of social media. In fact, Eric Qualman, one of the leaders, thought leaders for social media, came out and said that we don't have a choice whether to do social media or not. The question is, how well do we do it? Social media is your amplification point. It is where we can really focus in on showing and sharing the awareness of what your company does in the right context. So a lot of times what people are doing, maybe they have 5 minutes between meetings, maybe they'll flip through a couple of TikToks. Well, they're not going to want to read a white paper on a TikTok or be lectured to. They're in a relaxed, a laid back, a sit back type of environment. They want you to respect where they're at. So, and deliver content accordingly. So maybe it's just something to think about. Maybe it's just a bite-sized data point that we want to share on social media with a strong call to action back to the web. Search is another extremely important evolution that's taken place and it's one that deals hand in hand with content. So as I unpack this, just hang with me here, because I think this is something that we miss. I think what we're doing is trying to do too much on the evolution of search and not look into our site search. Because search started as Archie. I don't know how many people remember Archie or Ask Jeeves, but we're able to go and scour the internet and bring back results. And so we get a list of links. And that evolved into this little company called Google, where they pretty much dominate the world now. But in fact, their name is a verb. That's when you know you made it really well. But as Google developed, they created this evolution of search and what we expect from a search standpoint. And we need to bring that evolution of search into our sites. And in the future, we need to start looking at AI and looking at different advanced intelligent technology to deliver on these expectations that we're being trained right now from Google. And those expectations are this, is that we should provide answers, not choices. When you go to Google, you type something in, you want the answer there. You don't want a list of links. And we want our site search to be as powerful as internet searches, not an afterthought, not something that doesn't work. And what I mean by site search is on your website right now, your search technology must be able to produce rich media results, not just a list of links, not just here's your blog that you can find the content in. It needs to go much deeper than that. In fact, what happens is that we've created, or Google has created, this searcher that doesn't really fit into your customer journey. I mean, I'm sure everyone recognizes their customer journeys like this, right? And they're all over the place. And we have 3 different styles of customers that come in. So maybe you're a browser and all you want to do is just click links all over through the site. You have really not a big destination to go to, but you're just clicking things around. And that's fine. And this is a real case. I mean, you may see this on your site. And then you've got your navigators that will follow your path that you've outlaid for them. And they know exactly where to go. They're just going to click, 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 and get down to the destination. And then you've got these searchers. They just drop in anywhere. There's no pattern. There's no flow. There's no path. They drop in, they can get their goal, and they drop out. And so our customer journeys need to incorporate these different personas and the touch points and the opportunities and the experience that they have. And we need to be able to mix and match different strategies as we go forward. So it's not just a list of links, but maybe it's people have also considered these types of products or content. You can get down to personalized content. You can get to previously searched content. So you're starting to see that this will impact an entire aspect of customers that are coming to your site that traditionally we just don't pay attention to, because we think that it's all about finding, accessing, and consuming content. But it's not as linear as that. It's not as simple as that. And we must address all 3 to be successful. So as we wrap up here, we talked about a lot of different things, and I hope that you listen to this again and get as much information out of it, because as we look at these digital experiences, there's a perception gap that we have in our industries and our companies, and we're not delivering on what our users expect. Content's still king. Do not devalue content. Your content experience needs to be developed with that end user in mind, with the device, with the message in mind. And we need to engage in different ways. We need to push the envelope into immersive tech. So we don't have this. We don't have to see this in a sea of sameness as other companies. How are we different? How are we going to approach our customers differently? And we need to take the same amount of effort we use with SEO on internet searching as we do with our own search experience on our websites. And finally, we need to plan that customers will consume content differently. There is a difference between a browser, a navigator, and a searcher. So here's a couple of companies that I think have done a great job utilizing this framework and being disruptive in what they've done from their competition from a disruptive standpoint. One is Lakeland Health, Spectrum Health at Lakeland, and these guys are actually using that decoupled CMS, Sitefinity's decoupled CMS, like we talked about earlier, and being able to shoot messages to digital signage. They're using microsites. They're using mobile, and so now I have that one central location of content that they're able to engage with. And then we have State Electric Supply, and these guys have found a niche because they're conducting their B2B business as if they were B2C. And they're being rewarded from their end users. Now, 244% revenue generation, and 120% conversion increase. These are big numbers because we're applying the principles of B2C into the B2B world. And the last one, which is one of my favorites, is Nova Scotia Power. This is a utility company, and as we know, utility companies do not have competition. It's a binary choice. You want power or you don't. But what does that look like as we unpack that? Why would they invest in digital experiences? Well, they've actually found a return on their investment through their cost center, or their call center. And so by reducing the number of calls, they reduce the number of costs associated with that. And now they have a new, more efficient section on their site that they're able to deliver the expectations and the self-service model that their customers look for. And they're rewarded because now they have a more efficient business model. So those are just some examples as we get to as we see how this content experience really can play effect inside businesses today, and as we start looking at that holistic digital experience view and the importance that content can play. So Stuart, I think we have a couple of minutes for sort of questions. I want to hand it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Again, and thanks so much for going through all of this idea of understanding the content experience. Again, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there. I mean, what is the challenge? You create a great piece of content, you create something out there, you love it, you put it up on your company blog, and then nobody sees it. And of course, what's the sense at that point? So, again, really appreciate that. I just want to mention here to everyone again, if you've got a question for our speaker, Gregg Shupe from Progress Software, just simply use the question tool that you see there on the left side of your screen. We're going to get to as many audience questions as we can over the next 10 minutes or so. Before we get to the questions that are coming in here, I just want to remind you as well, if you want a copy of today's slides, you will find a PDF of the deck right now in the event resources area. You'll see that tab up at the top of your screen. Also, today's webinar has been recorded and will be available on demand. So if you want to go back and watch this again, or if you want to go and share it with a colleague, we're going to send you a link to that on-demand version about 3:30 Eastern Time today. So keep an eye on your email then. It'll be right there. So Greg, let's jump into some of these questions that have started coming in here pretty aggressively. Look, one of the things I think for many, and you talk a little bit briefly about measurement of this. So yeah. What's really, as you look at this, and you're looking at your own site, and you're looking at your content, and you're trying to sort of understand the engagement, what kind of, we all look at metrics on our ads and everything like that. How should you be looking at the metrics related to your content? And what is really the best way to start to measure the success out there?
This is a great question, and so whoever asked it, thank you so much. One thing I think we do partially well right now, I'd say moderately well, is that we test our web pages. We do A/B testing, and if you're not doing that, that's step one. do A/B testing, because what that allows you to do is you're constantly trying to make things better, make things change, see what effect that will have on your end user. So A/B testing is definitely one of the tools that I think are a little underutilized, but more utilized than most. I think that a lot of times we get in this mindset that if we produce it, they will come. It's and I think it's a false narrative. Not only from a amplification standpoint that we need to go out into social and drive it, but we need to push ourselves to constantly innovate, to constantly develop. And that's why I like that agile methodology. And agile is traditionally for software developers, so they're constantly pushing new code out and changing it and seeing what works. But I think we can do that with messaging and content as well, because I think if we're positioning ourselves or challenging ourselves to constantly innovate, to constantly push the envelope, we need to push new things out there all the time, measure the results, make the adaptation, and push it back out again. It's a never-ending cycle. And so take a look at the agile methodology and apply it to your content teams as they develop content, even these little bite-sized insights that they might want to share on social, and see what works best. One thing we've done at Progress is that I've gone out and started making videos of different events that we may have, virtual events. And so I'll put those little snapshot videos, they're maybe 30 seconds to a minute long, but I'll put those out on social to see if we have a better engagement rate. And those are some of those testing, those innovative ways that we can go out and do something, because at the end of the day, it's all about being unique and inspiring. And I think that's what really your customers and end users gravitate to.
Mm-hmm. So, Greg, when you're talking as you go through that and understanding sort of the measurement and the metrics, should we be using, look, we often think like, how many people saw this page? But is the number of people that see a page or click on a page or get to a page the important thing that you need to be looking at, or do you need to go sort of at a more advanced approach and understand, are they taking the actions you want them to take? Are they, is it effective, right? Does it matter if you get, 1,000 people to a page and one person takes the action, or are you better off getting, 50 people to a page and 10 people take the action?
Yeah, and the result, I agree, and I'm actually going to say something that probably is not it's not very popular, but it's going to be I'll take the 50 people with the 10-person action. I think that's more about how we can repeat that process and improve on that process. I think when we start taking a look at like page views and bounce rates and our traditional metrics that we do on a website, I think at that point it's good to know. And again, it's a very historical view of it. But I think we need to start incorporating more predictive analytics into that. So as we start taking a look, maybe it's 1,000 people and you get one conversion. Well, that's your conversion rate's at a 0.1%. I mean, it's exceedingly low. Now, if you have 50 people and 10 people convert, now you've got a really impressive conversion rate. So what are those changes? What happened to make those conversions more apparent to those end users? Maybe it's the placement of the call to action. Maybe it's the words that you use in the call to action. Maybe it's a micro experience that you've deployed on your landing page. And there's a lot of these different elements that we can create and test. And your metrics that you use both are historical and future casting on how you go about gaining those insights to know what to change and how much to change it in order to best get the biggest impact of the result.
Got it. Thank you. Another thing, Greg, that you talked a little bit about here is you discussed, and we had a question coming in, this idea of, browsers, navigators, and searchers, right? So three types of people, three very different site experiences and content experiences.
Right.
So when you're designing and you're creating, are you building for all three? Should you be focused with one in mind? What would be sort of a good framework for understanding, do you create things for searchers specifically, or do you go, or is another group more important out there?
Yeah, I don't think any one group holds more weight than another, and you need to plan for all three. Now, without going a beautiful mind on you with all the with a string theory of customer journeys, you do need to have a path that you would take your navigators down, and that's your intended path. And then you need to understand that browsers are going to cross-link. They're going to link all throughout the site. So we do still need to provide a path on every page that will help browsers navigate down into the conversion cycle or the conversion points of your web. So those two, I think, we're used to dealing with those two, and I don't think that there's any anomalies at that point. I think just really understanding how that linking structure works on your site. It's the searchers that will give us heartburn, and I think this group is growing. And I think that what's happened is that if you go to Amazon, the most predominant thing on Amazon.com, and you can imagine the number of eyes that get to that page, is your search. It is front and center. It's there on purpose, and we are being trained all the time to search for stuff that we want. We don't browse Amazon, right? You're not just go clicking around, or very rarely do you do that. But you search on something specific, and so this is where that site search is so important, because we as consumers are trained to search for things that we want, and because we want to have that instant gratification and that instant goal attainment, we search on it. We want to get in. We want to accomplish our goal and get back out, and those are motivated customers for you. And I think those have a higher converting rate than your navigators or your browsers, because if you do it correctly, they will continue to come back because they're able to achieve what they set out to do in a very quick manner.
So is site search the same thing as SEO as people build their strategy, or are these different areas?
No, I think that's a great question. Site search has to deal with your own website, your company website. Can SEO play a part of it? Absolutely, because you can start changing the rankings and how things come up and what order they would come up with by using keywords. Traditionally, we look at SEO as Google, for example, since they dominate search. And so when you Google something, and you type that into Google and find the results, that ranking is definitely impacted by search engine optimization, and that's the entire discipline came from that. So there are very different elements. Site search is a technology or an application that's going to sit on your corporate website. SEO is the way that you now change your values of your keywords to help your rankings, and it can help both in your site and it can help both on internet searches.
Right. Well, Greg, I'm just looking at the clock here, and we're fast approaching the end of our time today. So I do want to thank you for sharing this and having the time to take a few audience questions here. Really very, very helpful. Let me just take a moment here and share your contact info again to everyone in the audience. If you do want to get in touch with Greg, you've got LinkedIn here and his Twitter feed. So you can find him along those lines, and so you can go and learn a little bit more. I just want to mention also to our audience, if you did submit a question, we didn't have a chance to get to it, I always do make sure that all audience questions get forwarded over to our sponsor, so there is always the opportunity for some kind of an offline response. So just again, some final reminders here to everyone. Again, if you want to get the slides, you'll find them event resources. Check your email about 3:30 today. We're going to send you a link to the on-demand version, so keep your eyes out for that. Certainly feel free to share all of that with your colleagues. If you think you've got some people who are going to be interested in some of these highlights, have them register. We'll send them that link to the on-demand version directly. Again, you get about 3:30 today. And lastly, adweek.com/webinars. Check out the webinar calendar. Sign up for an upcoming webinar. We love having you here. So again, I want to thank our sponsor, Progress Software, and our speaker, Gregg Shupe, their digital experience thought leader. I want to thank our audience for taking time out of your busy day, and we look forward to seeing everyone at an upcoming Ad Week webinar.